So I guess we're live. So good evening, everybody, or good morning, or good afternoon, or kung kailan nyo man to pinapanood. And welcome to the first ever democracy.net.ph podcast. I'm Janina Santos, and I will be your host for tonight. So welcome, everybody. I guess I'm going to start off with a round of introduction of who we will be talking to today. So the first is, of course, we have with us Attorney Francis Houston Acero, Kiko, our president, and also the data privacy officer of Meralco. Hi, Kiko.
Hello.
Okay. And then we also have with us engineer Pierre Tito Galia, Philippine ECE, Philippine registered electronics communication engineer. Pierre is a professional electronics engineer and a multi-role manager of over 20 years of experience, and is an information and communications technology, rights, governance, development, and security advocate with more than a decade of experience and contribution to the cause. So Pierre is also the co-convener of democracy.net.ph. Hi, Pierre. Happy to have you with
Happy
us.
to be here, Janina.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Carlos Nazareno, Naz, and he is an interactive media specialist with 2 decades of experience with web and new media technology. He is the director for rights for democracy.net.ph. Hey, Naz.
Hello. How are you? Happy to be here.
Very well. Okay. We also have with us Dominic Ligot, Doc, who is a data analyst, researcher, software developer, entrepreneur, and technologist. He is the founder of Seralytics, a social impact AI company, and dataethics.ph. Our resident AI expert is in the house. Hey, Doc.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. And last but not the least, we have with us Attorney Dana Batnag, a journalist, lawyer, and data privacy officer, and also, of course, a member of democracy.net.ph. Hi po, Attorney
Hello.
Dana.
Hi.
Okay. And of course, we just have to say thank you to our best tech girl, Darlene. Thank you for supporting us and making this conversation possible. She is in the backstage, but we feel her presence. Okay. So I guess we should start with the first issue. So on this issue, we will have with us, hi Pierre. We're gonna have some really exciting and difficult questions for you tonight. But I guess you're used to it, no?
Well, that's why we're here, to make sure that we try to explain tech issues as best we can to the general public.
Mhm. But first, before we go to Pierre, let me just tell you guys what the podcast is about tonight. It's actually about, no surprise there, the elections and a lot of tech related issues that are important in discussing these elections. We are also going to look into issues of disinformation, and we're going to try to correct some misconceptions, right, Pierre, especially for our first topic. So I guess let's jump right in, Pierre. So recently nagkaroon ng issue tungkol din sa ACM software hash. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the right term? And what does ACM software mean anyway?
Okay, the ACM software or ito yung automated counting machine software. Okay? Yun yung makina kung saan nilagay yung balota. Yung natawag na software hash. Ito yung code na nag-identify uniquely na ito yung current version ng software. Ngayon, ang naging issue ay kinwestiyon ang COMELEC na version 3.4 daw ang na-release or dapat yun yung version na naka-install. Pero bakit 3.5 yung ang nakalagay doon sa makina mismo? Ngayon, no May 12 mismo ng eleksyon, sabi ng COMELEC, naglabas sila ng press release na yung totoong review, yung tinatawag na final trusted build, ay version 3.5 pala, hindi version 3.4. So kung may issue man tungkol sa hash, hindi siya applicable. Mas akma na tawagin siya issue tungkol sa information. Not necessarily disinformation, pero timely information. Ang naging issue nito, nagkaroon ng maraming questions ang ating mga kababayan, ay hindi timely nag-update ang COMELEC tungkol sa kung ano yung totoong trusted network, final trusted build. And dapat, in-update nila noong March 29 pa. Hindi ngayon lang sila na-update. Ngayon nila kinokorek. Ito yung final trusted build version number. Dapat noon pa man, naglabas na sila ng correct information. Which leads us to what we can conclude from the issue. The issue is not whether or not the software is correct. The issue is whether or not the government communicates clearly, communicates on time, communicates on a timely basis, and communicates quickly accurate information. Because in the absence of timely, accurate, and complete information, nagkakaroon ng room for disinformation. And that's the issue that I'm glad that we have Naz and Kiko and Dominic talk about today. Because that's the weakness that was exploited by the lack of timely information.
Yes, so ang nangyari dito, ang sinasabi mo, may void tayo in information dahil hindi timely yung paglabas ng information, kaya nagkaroon ng mga misconceptions na nangyari. Not necessarily disinformation, maybe misinformation, pero it's because hindi timely yung pag-release ng statement. So, ano po yung opinion nyo dun sa statement na nilabas ng COMELEC? Do you think it would suffice to dampen the thinking ng mga tao na nagkaroon ng election fraud because of the ACM software hash issue? Is it enough of a crisis communication?
That's a bigger question. Any election is considered valid if people believe in it. Any election is considered invalid if the people don't accept it. So if the elections today not accepted by our people, hindi tinanggap ng bayan ang results ng eleksyon, kahit anong dahilan ang pwedeng gamitin para hindi paniwalaan ang eleksyon. Kahit yung ganitong issue. Or kahit na issue tulad ng hindi na-feed yung ballots or nagkaroon ng issue sa pag-shade, kahit ano ang pwedeng gawing issue para hindi paniwalaan kung ang taong bayan mismo ay hindi naniniwala sa outcome ng election. Ngayon, yun ang tanong. Sa mata ba ng taong bayan ay tinatanggap ba ang resulta ng election? Kasi kung totoo nga tinatanggap na ng taong bayan ang resulta ng election, hindi magiging issue ang naging confusion caused by the delay in releasing this timely information. That does not exculpate COMELEC from having to release the claim. It's something that they have to fix. The information must be timely and complete when it's needed.
Siguro that's a lessons learned for COMELEC as well, no? When they want to fight disinformation during the elections, they should be the first and the most proactive ones to really release these kinds of information to the public. Pero lagyan po natin ng scenario.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. Gawa natin na sir, what if talagang magkaiba talaga yung ACM software hash? Is that enough of a basis to claim election fraud?
No. The reason for that is you have to figure out what's the difference between version 3.4 and 3.5. If there's a significant variation or a significant modification in the code between 3.4 and 3.5, then maybe we can start questioning it. But that's not what the multiple sources of truth come in. The audio is just an error in public communication. The COMELEC came out with this statement. It's delayed, and that's the issue. But it still does not show any reason for doubt when it comes to the differences in versioning. And then lastly, we go back to the principle that they who allege must prove.
Yeah.
If you're going to allege that there is some sort of issue when it comes to the code during the versioning, those who say that there's an issue have to show evidence that there is an issue with the code. They cannot say you must prove that there is no such issue, because proving the negative is not how things are done. The principle is they who allege must prove.
So thanks so much, Pierre. Please continue to educate us about this, and if this comes up throughout the rest of the podcast, let us know more about this issue. But I think right now, na this is a very good jumping point. What Pierre said about the lack of information creating space for disinformation, because disinformation is the next topic. And for this, again, we do have some speakers. I do have some questions, but please, everybody, feel free to jump in. It's a free flowing conversation. So for this part naman of the podcast, I'm gonna have to ask Naz, Attorney Dana, and also Sir Doc to jump in, and let's discuss disinformation during the elections, no? Madami tayong nakita, no? Yung isa dyan, hindi pa yata natutulog kakatingin ng mga disinformation narratives, and I'm pretty sure there's also a lot of AI involved in shaping these narratives. So, ang unang-una kong tanong siguro for the three speakers and also for everybody else, ano ba yung mga nakikita nyo online? Ano yung mga prevalent narratives or interesting narratives na nakikita nyo online related to the elections? I guess I'll start with, okay lang ba, Doc? Kung meron kang napapansin.
Well, after the elections, marami ako napapansin. Like, there's an attempt to give credit to Digong for stuff that others have done. Like ngayon, merong lumalabas na posts putting Digong and Bam Aquino together for the free education bill. Tapos may isa pa, I think it was Pia Cayetano naman who created the bill for the Pogos. Parang ganun eh. Parang now there's a way, parang there's an attempt to associate Digong with yung mga winning senators. Wala lang, just thinking out loud.
This is interesting, no? Kasi parang hindi pa sila nakakapag-start mag-serve for re-electionists. Hindi pa sila nakakabalik sa seat talaga, and there's already these narratives that are either trying to discredit them with the BAM case, and maybe with Pia's case more on, associate her with the Pogo, which is somewhat detrimental naman or negative naman. Okay. What about Attorney Dana? Meron po ba kayong mga napapansin na disinformation narratives?
Well, yung latest, di ba, yung aside from yung kay Bam, before the elections, ang madalas kong nakikita at naririnig ko rin doon sa mga nakausap kong taxi driver, yung pag-discredit sa election. Na magkakaroon ng dayaan, pero nung tinatanong ko yung taxi driver kung paano, hindi niya alam. Basta sabi niya, yun yung sabi ng mga eksperto. Tapos, yung isang rinig natin, right, sa isang interview, si John Cybersecurity.
Oh, yes.
Ang paliwanag na kung paano magkakadayaan, pero hindi talaga totoo yung proseso. Kasi ang sinasabi niya, i-attack yung transmission, pagkatapos magkakaroon ng denial of service daw, di ba? Pero at the same time, sabi niya, merong MC catcher na that works in a different way. So, for people who know how it works, hindi siya totoo. Pero, kung hindi mo alam how the electoral process works at hindi mo alam yung technology, ay siguro nga may dayaan kasi daming jargon.
Yeah. So nakaka-model ng like kasi kung ako, I'm not really a cybersecurity person. Pag narinig ko yun, nakakatakot siya. And, gusto ko lang kunin yung opinion ni Pierre because we all know that Pierre is also in cybersecurity and he's laughing. I think he has something very nice to share, food for thought, my dear friend.
I love the fact when people use technobabble to confuse people, and it also gets me angry. This is the whole point of being unscrupulous. You create fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and try and use that to hurt people. You are hurting their exercise of their civil rights.
Yeah.
You are hurting their intellectual beliefs, wherein everybody should vote their conscience, and you're trying to hurt that. So you're going to talk about distributed denial of service, or DDoS. It's essentially millions of computers attacking one computer through the use of the internet. We're talking about an IMSI capture. That's a different thing. An IMSI capture is simply a fake cell site right? It's a device that pretends to be a cell site and matches all the cell phones. Two different technologies, two different purposes, usually fraudulent. There are very few uh, positive use cases for this. But then if you put them together for the purposes of press release that, oh my God, these people are doing all these things,
Yeah.
this is right there, this information. You're using
Yeah.
that to scare people. Um, Cyber criminals, they use the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, creating confusion towards people so that they'll be able to commit fraud. Like yung tinatawag na budol-budol, di ba?
Mm.
Yung mga phishing emails. It's like you have to click this because if you don't click this, then you lose access to your account and so on and so forth. It scares people to do something that they shouldn't be doing. In this way, in what they're doing about conflating DDoS and MC capture to scare people, what are they trying to do? They're trying to scare people from exercising their rights to speech, which is wrong, and that's something that we should all fight. And I think that advocates who are fighting against information and malinformation are trying their level best to defeat these things.
Mhm. It's interesting, no, kasi I believe the John cybersecurity thing came up a few days before the election. So wala pa silang nakikitang evidence of election fraud. Meron na silang fear-mongering na nangyayari. Okay. Any other thoughts po on this, Attorney Dana, regarding dito sa pronouncements ni John?
Parang iyon. Pero kasi ang maganda doon, hindi naman hindi siya tumawid sa election eh. Kasi yung fear, yung ngayon, yung pinag-usapan before na nirereklamo, right, was about the difference dun sa code or dun sa hash na ang sabi ng COMELEC ay hindi na lang nila na ipaliwanag ng maayos. Although ang sa akin kasi noon parang, were you not able to explain it in time or you didn't have an explanation at the time it was happening?
They should have explained it since March, not May.
Kaya nga,
March pa lang dapat. And
yun na nga eh. So ang tanong, baka hindi pa nangyayari. Kaya may confusion.
Going back to the concept of information void creates space for disinformation and misinformation. Okay, so this is really interesting, and maybe we can circle back to our favorite person at the moment, Sir John Cybersecurity. But Naz, can you tell us about something na mga napapansin mo during your time online?
Yeah, itong si John Cybersecurity dun sa podcast ng former government official who's in the Netherlands now. There was a lot of techno babble, and if you're not into tech and are not familiar with these terms, madali ka mabudol kasi they're very highfalutin terms for the average person. And then the thing is, this John Cybersecurity guy, he kept talking about proof and diagrams, but he showed nothing. He just kept spewing techno babble. Wala siyang pinakita. He said, papadala ko ng diagram sa inyo pagkatapos email ko or something like that.
Messenger. Messenger niya.
Messenger or whatever. Pero it's hot air because he didn't show anything. So it just created an atmosphere of fear, uncertainty, doubt. Side note nga pala, MC catchers, they were, one of their early uses was actually for law enforcement. I believe it was the one that helped catch then black hat hacker Kevin Mitnick. Trinak yung siya ng law enforcement van using a fake cell site. So mula dun sa law enforcement, ginagamit na siya ng criminals ngayon, like siguro possibly to intercept your communications and possibly OTP one-time passwords. So that's something to watch out for. Kaya medyo a lot of security professionals are saying na OTP, SMS for OTPs is insecure. So you should switch to app-based ones, etc. or hardware-based authentication methods.
Okay, as the non-techie person in the room, I'm going to ask, can you actually use an MC catcher to commit election fraud?
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay. So, pwede. Pero
Absolutely, you
hindi
can.
yun ang nakita natin na trend after, di ba? That was not the, sabi nga ni Attorney Dana, hindi yun nakitang problem after the elections. It was the code. That was the issue.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Actually, they can allege all they want, di ba? They can allege that this is suspicious, that this device was used, or that we believe that this technology was used. But remember, the principle is always they who allege must prove. Come up with evidence. Show the devices. If you have the smoking gun, bring it up. If you catch the person, find the person, and find the device that's done. But that's the weakness kasi right now in a society like ours, where we often trust a person based on what they say. By the mere fact that I trust this person, therefore I will believe what this person said. Even if it is something like social relationships. You've never met in real life. You're not truly friends. But because you're friends on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, you believe that you have a relationship. And that's how you believe that what this person claims to be is true. That's the weakness that we have now. People have not adopted what is called in cybersecurity called zero trust. Zero trust is never trust, always verify. So if someone comes out with a claim, don't trust the claim right away. Have someone authenticate the claim. Have someone prove the claim to be true. Have someone show evidence that the claim has some basis. Because without that, as a country, we will be prone to online budol.
So, budol, no? Tapos ngayon, yung pambubudol is hindi na lang narratives, may tinatawag tayong coordinated inauthentic behavior. And I think, Naz, I'll throw the question to you. Meron ka bang mga napapansin na not just disinformation or not just distorted information, but there's actually coordination and intention in spreading these kinds of harmful narratives? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I did some monitoring online of Facebook posts just prior to the election day. And then may nakita ako nakita rin siguro nyo to, yung narrative that former President Duterte was kidnapped by the ICC, that it wasn't a lawful arrest. So I saw an influencer make a post about it. And then within the first 2 hours of her post, the number of accounts that shared it, 10% of them were fake accounts, were inauthentic accounts that if you look at some features, mukhang hindi totoong tao, or somebody, it's a sock puppet account, bale. So these inauthentic accounts are spreading narratives that are used to sway opinion. So yung nangyayari is ina-amplify nitong sock puppet accounts yung narratives online. Tapos magla-latch on yung actual people whose opinions will be swayed, and then magkakaroon ng organic sharing niya.
Okay, so is CIB common? Medyo bukod dun sa sock puppet account, I mean dun sa influencer na nakita mo. Napansin mo rin ba siya sa iba? Or maybe, I mean baka mga fans lang nung influencer yon, right? I mean, you create a fake account and then kasi gusto mo influencer, so i-share yung sinasabi niya. So,
well, in one instance, I saw an account that only had 14 friends, tas medyo bago yata yung pagkagawa. Tapos shinare niya sa maraming group. So, suspicious yun, yung ganyung klaseng behavior. Kasi you'd expect na certain, kung bago lang yung account, parang hindi pa ganun karaming groups na pinupuntahan or whatever. Yeah. So parang purpose made siya to really spread those kinds of narratives and topics. And a lot of those accounts then, yung tinatawag na parang single purpose account, may particular topic na kinakalat. Yun.
So I guess the question will be, so what harm does this do, diba? ano yung harm na nagagawa ng coordinated unauthentic behavior, say for instance sa elections natin?
It really harms democracy because it spreads narratives that are not true and distort the knowledge and views of voters. Kasi key to democracy is an informed voting populace. Kapag hindi na totoo yung pinapaniwalaan nila, medyo it's no longer democratic. That kind of that you lose your ability to vote wisely.
Anybody from the group who wants to jump in and add more insights to this?
Well, actually, election offense sana yon. Kaya lang, inamend yung COMELEC resolution to require only the official candidates and the parties na bawal gumawa ng fake narratives, gumamit ng AI, etc. And so, individuals, pwede.
Okay po.
Kasi issue kasi yan ng, I guess, yung, well, nung unang lumabas yung resolution, people were complaining, wait lang, paano naman aking free speech, right? So, inamend yung resolution. The resolution came out last year and then in a few months or weeks lang, inamend yung resolution. So, wala tayong magagawa. But it was serious enough for the COMELEC to actually issue a resolution. Pero maganda dun kasi, yung resolution na yun naman, di naman siya, putok sa buho na bigla na lang lumabas. It was based on election laws about fake news, ganon. And then, meron ng social media resolution ng COMELEC even in the past election pa, before pa. Kaya lang, walang pumapansin. Tapos yun nga, kasama na ngayon yung AI, inauthentic coordinated behavior. Kaya lang yun nga, candidates lang. It would be good to ask the COMELEC kung may napansin sila sa candidates, kung may nahuli sila, kasi hindi rin malinaw sa akin kung paano yung reporting. Ang sabi nila, there's this task force you're supposed to report to, pero hindi ko nakita na merong malaking education campaign na kung may makita kayong peke na news na being spread by the candidates, you can call this number. I didn't see that.
So, would you say po na may go pair?
Maybe na the elections are over, we can exercise our freedom of information, right? And send an FOI request both to the DICT and the COMELEC, asking them for a report on what the task force did. Doesn't matter who will answer. Maybe it's COMELEC, maybe it's DICT. But at least we have that recourse. FOI is still an active policy that can be exercised.
May point si Attorney Dana, no? Like, before, I tried to look for a hotline ng COMELEC where you can report election violations. Parang wala akong nakitang immediately viewable by Googling. So, it was not prominently spread, the reporting mechanism for these kinds of things.
So, so there is an existing resolution prohibiting certain acts, and yun nga, may AI. Siguro later on, himayin natin to, no? Yung effectiveness niya, maybe we can give some recommendations for improvement. But before that, my other question is, yung konsepto ng AI, prior to the election, parang lagi siyang napapag-usapan, and it kind of became something scary, I guess. Kasi when we look at the elections of other countries, say Indonesia, India, very prominent yung use ng AI. So I guess this question is specifically for our in-house AI expert. Doc, gaano ka prevalent yung use ng AI, and what are the, if may positive and negative effects, ano yung mga positive and negative effects na yun?
I think for this election, I don't know kung may nakita kayo, there wasn't too much, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
At least walang deepfakes masyado. Maybe yung AI-generated photos, perhaps, but not really that prevalent. So I think maybe I would say that it was a success na we rang the alarm bells as early as probably a year ago to expect to be watchful of AI. Tapos I think nakatulong din yung the COMELEC resolution 11064. I think that's the resolution where they basically banned deepfakes. So I guess maybe that's one of the good outcomes na talaga na prime yung public, government policy was put out, and as a result, at least from my perspective, wala masyado na deepfake. I don't know kung may nakita kayo.
Wala naman ako on mine. From prophylaxis, no? All the attention given to AI from last year until this year kind of like acted as a prophylaxis so that people will not actually attempt to use something as deceptive as deepfake. But Naz, you were about to say something.
Yeah. So
if it's a win, it's a win. I'll claim it as a win.
Yeah.
Pero it's really not. For me, it wasn't so much AI. I think the biggest, I would call it, fiasco for this election was the surveys. Talagang the surveys were completely out of this world in terms of the rankings. Kaya tuloy, I think that's a question coming up. Pero for me, mas relevant yun eh. Whether it was a fluke or nachambahan lang. I think there was at least one survey provider na mukhang nachambahan niya si Bam Aquino. I think that was a bigger factor for this election at least. Kesa AI.
Yeah, we weren't expecting that. We were expecting AI issues to come up, right, Naz? Mm-hmm. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, so in the Indian elections last year, deepfakes were used consensually by the candidates themselves. They hired this guy who had a firm which would deepfake you and let you speak in one of the many, many, many Indian languages and lip sync you to them to spread your message via AI translation or a proper translator. Tapos naka-deepfake para nagmumukhang you're speaking in the local language, which endeared people dun sa far-flung areas that spoke those languages to those candidates. So sa Philippines, I think the biggest trigger ng lack of or use of deepfakes was probably the Bongbong Marcos, President Marcos Polvoron incident.
Yeah.
That they threw the full force and resources of the law against the people who perpetrated that video. I think that really deterred actors from deploying deepfakes. And like Doc said, ang mas nakita ko is yung Gen AI na non-deepfake, na image generators and AI animators, like image to video. Yun yung mas dineploy. And they were used to, like, let's say, make certain candidates look more appealing and lovable, like creating an anime intro style video of the candidates. So that's one example. Para mukhang cool talaga sila.
That reminds me of a case in Indonesia na ang ginagawa nila was they created an anime version of a presidential candidate. Tapos the presidential candidate had a shady reputation. So ginamit nila yung AI na para ma-soften yung reputation ng kandidato na to and basically endeared him to his to constituents that normally wouldn't vote for him, like young people and women. And pero another election technique, and I think Pierre will love this, is that this particular presidential candidate had a very beloved cat that has an Instagram account. Yeah. And he won.
Who was that? I don't know anything of that nature.
But it's interesting na the use of AI to soften the reputation of these politicians. So, Attorney Dana, you have something to add?
Yeah, I think kasi in the beginning, we, or at least I, was expecting something like yung parang black ops ng una. Yung mga pinipaste yung ulo ng kandidato sa hubad na babae. So we were expecting AI like that, or AI like yun nga, yung isa-soften yung ano. But so we didn't see that. Ang nakita natin instead ay, nakita ko yung mga memes na si Romualdez, yung ulo niya sa crocodile na may tray ng cash sa likod. So ganoon ang nakita kong kumakalat. Or yung mga Ghibli-fied pictures nila Duterte. So may AI pero nakadikit sa issues. Hindi sa kandidato. Although I think yung issues na yun, kagaya ng nabanggit ni Naz kanina, yung kidnapping sa ICC, actually boosted yung some of the candidacies ng ibang senatoriables, ng ibang politicians.
So, gamit yung issues, no? And
But
relating
if
that.
I'm going
Go, Pierre.
if I'm going to add one more element into the equation, this is the midterms. Historically, the midterms in the Philippines is not as highly contested as the presidential elections. So maybe, and I hope it is not the case, but maybe what's going on right now are trial balloons, like test beds for technology, test beds for approaches. Like Dana was talking about Studio Ghiblified ads, right? Making people feel seem approachable and so on. But that's something that they're testing now for proper implementation in 2028. So maybe we didn't see anything today. We didn't see a lot today, but I suspect that they are refining their methods of attack and defense for 2020.
So it's a litmus test kung magiging effective yung use of AI for whatever campaign strategies that they're. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an AI person. Would you say that this is cheaper and more effective than traditional campaign methods like tarpaulin, punta sa mga barangay, magtotalk? Would you say that it's more, ano yung advantage of using AI in an electoral campaign? Naz, go ahead.
Definitely cheaper. Kasi you can generate AI images for free or for very little cost. And then mababa na rin yung cost ng video generators ng AI. Tarpaulin, sabihin natin Metro Manila, traffic pa lang medyo talo ka na eh. Tapos magpiprint ka pa, magpapaskill ka pa. Very low cost ng AI ngayon. It's now within people's reach. And I think that's why we didn't see as much deepfakes kasi mas accessible yung Gen AI image and video generators kaysa sa deepfake. It's a process of deepfaking people. So I think magiging mas legacy na yun, no? Yung use of deepfakes in online memes, etc. It's gonna be more of generative AI voice, images, and videos. Sorry, correction. Deepfakes mukhang magagamit pa rin dun sa lip sync.
Okay.
Which we've seen a number of dun sa scams online, with public figures being made to say stuff they didn't say and endorse things they did not endorse.
Okay. So and even the anime video, even because
again, sorry.
Sorry, Naz. Even the anime, kasi I thought that I saw the anime video. Maganda yung pagkakagawa, in fairness. Yeah. Even that is that's in terms of money and resources, accessible na rin yung ganong
Yes, it's accessible. Kasi let's say Studio Ghiblified images, papadaanin mo lang yan sa ChatGPT, and you use stuff like Kling AI or Runway ML to animate them. So once you've generated the still images, pwede mo na i-animate with prompts using the animation models. So medyo affordable siya compared to years ago. Kung i-hand draw mo pa yung mga yon, sobrang mura at mabilis gawin. Time and money is the cost is now really affordable.
Okay, thanks. Pierre, you were saying something?
Add to that. What we will anticipate for the next elections is that AI will be a cheap means of attack. But for defense, I'm not certain that AI will be useful. Because for defense of your candidacy, what really works is going to the ground, getting endorsements from the LGUs, getting endorsements from local political figures, meeting with people, creating town halls and all of that. Which is why we have a certain senator, or well, he hasn't been proclaimed yet, but his numbers surprised a lot of people. And from the data, it shows that the reason why this person was able to garner a lot of votes was this person was not merely supported by an influential religious group. He also made the effort into contacting local government executives and gaining their endorsements and gaining their votes. So, from a perspective of AI, generative AI, and all other flavors, deepfakes and such, they will be a cheap means of attack, especially if troll farms and troll farms coordinated inauthentic behavior and other such vectors will be used to spread the attacks. But in terms of defense, I'm not seeing that that AI will be used for defense.
Can I make a note then? Parang sa cybersecurity, when you're doing your job, nobody notices. Baka we were able to do our job successfully with regards to deepfakes. Kasi we were sounding the alarm for a long time now, more than a year actually, Doc, about deepfakes, and we were trying to educate the public and people in media about them. So, itong nangyari sa elections, we didn't see as much
Yeah,
of them.
tuloy-tuloy tayo dun.
Yeah, so maybe we did our job right.
Maybe.
Also, no, we don't
Yeah,
know,
I'll claim it.
we don't know what Comelec did. Kasi somebody told me na may mga nagre-reklamo, and then when Comelec reports it to the platform, mabilis din silang mag-take down. So, we really don't know kung anong nagawa ng DICT and Comelec. Baka nag-contribute din yun eh.
I'll go back
The
to dun
fact na
sa...
may policy sila.
Yeah. And siguro meron sigurong responses din talaga yung platforms and hopefully Comelec did coordinate with the platforms for faster takedowns of these possible deepfakes. But let's get back to the Comelec resolution. As you guys said, in this resolution and expand yung coverage of social media use, including AI, CIB, fake news, and everything else. But and I think it might be a good step to kind of I suppose regulate the information environment. But my question is, do you think it was effective? And if we can come up with policy recommendations right this minute na tatanggapin ng Comelec, what would be your recommendations to improve this resolution? Or baka naman hindi talaga siya useful, so let's just abolish. So, who do I start with? Doc? I guess we'll start with Doc. Kung meron kang any policy recommendation.
The resolution of Comelec?
Yeah. And do you think it's effective?
The most fundamental issue is wala pang reliable detection process. There's reporting. Pero let's say meron ngang nag-report. I'm not sure how you would adjudicate that, no? Lalo na at the height of campaign season. Yun lang, medyo, I guess, hindi siya na-test now kasi walang nag-attempt maybe. Pero in the future, lalo na with the electorate, kasi isipin nyo connected pa rin to sa survey question. If the argument is more voters now are young people, they're digitally savvy, you will probably expect the future elections will be more focused on that population. And so, mas matindi ang digital attacks, as Pierre said. No? Remember, in the 2028 election, Gen Alpha will vote na. May 18-year-old Gen Alpha na nun. So I'm just bracing for the worst. Baka ngayon nakalusot pa tayo because I guess people were kind of expecting traditional voters, but yung pala digital voters. Fortunately, iba yung mga candidates na lumabas. But that just means in the future, the rules will be very different. Yun yung pakiramdam ko. And if that happens, whatever Comelec put out, matetest talaga siya. I don't know how effective those policies are at the moment.
Okay, I just want to share something that I read on a Facebook post of a journalist friend, and he said the mind of the youth is a battleground. So, yeah. Detection, no? Kasi hindi naman lahat madaling makadetect ng deepfake. They don't have maybe they lack the knowledge or maybe they don't have access to tools. Okay, Naz, do you have anything to add on improving this resolution?
This yun iniisip ko is actually beyond COMELEC eh. It's more general proposal to improve the online information ecosystem. Kasi right now, in my opinion, the creation and selling of fake accounts and likes is already punishable by the law under Fraud to Cybercrime Act and maybe sa DTI, I'm not sure. So, for example, you do fake likes sa Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, and then you buy and sell fake accounts. You're defrauding the platforms when you do that, and you're also defrauding the customers of the platforms who pay for advertisement. So I don't know if lawmakers should look into it, into explicitly labeling these as punishable offenses to deter them. Kasi if you do that, maraming mawawala na sock puppet and inauthentic accounts which are used to spread disinformation and do influence operations. So, I guess yung magiging unhappy siguro dito will be some gamers who buy and sell gaming accounts because games technically fall under social media, online multiplayer games. So, baka interesanteng himayin ito. Pero I think that's one thing that can be done to help halt the spread of these kinds of activities.
Okay, so we'll ask Pierre and Attorney Dana the same thing. Maybe 1 or 2 sentences of policy recommendation for the COMELEC to maybe consider for the next election. Pierre?
I agree with Naz that it's useful to ask the Congress maybe or policymakers to find out if it's useful today. They're going to pursue because the person who is standing to sue all of these people who are committing these frauds are the platforms, not the people. It's the platforms who have standing to sue. That being said, we must continue this conversation. We must continue the conversation of how to fight coordinated inauthentic behavior, how to fight disinformation, malinformation, misinformation, because the solutions today might not be applicable tomorrow, and tomorrow will require another set of solutions. Going back to what Doc said, it have worked today, right? Let's go back to the policy that COMELEC has been using for years and years now. Despite the fact that there are rules against carrying firearms out of your residence, that we have banned that, there are still shootings. But by and large, the gun ban as a policy works, right? And sometimes, one day, we hope it's going to be often, the people who perpetrate election-related crimes using firearms will be prosecuted. So what does that mean? It means the policies that may not be perfect, but have stand a chance of working, let's continue to perpetuate them. Let's continue to improve them.
Thank you, and Attorney Dana. And welcome back, Kiko, who's also busy in the backstage. We'll get to you in a bit. Attorney Dana?
Well, sa akin, mas more on the implementation. Kasi I don't think that COMELEC is ready to implement the resolution. As I pointed out, wala akong nakitang malinaw na reporting process. Paano kung taga Batanes ka magre-report ka? Do you call Manila or do you call the COMELEC regional office? Walang ganong malinaw na proseso kung sino ang magre-report saan. Pangalawa, they just said they will work with experts, but I don't know how many experts they have ready at the national level, at the regional level, pag dumagsa lahat ng report. I don't know, but I suspect that one reason kung bakit hindi malakas yung information dissemination nila about the reporting is because wala silang mechanism to accept the reports and to act on it. So, I would have wanted more. Sana kasama yung individuals, pero yung parties and candidates would have been a good start. Pero kasi walang malinaw na mechanism. So sana magkaroon. Kasi problema talaga yung 2028. As Pierre pointed out, and as Doc also said, it can only get worse.
Okay, thank you po, Attorney Nadan. We will give Kiko a very easy challenge. If you had one policy recommendation for the COMELEC to improve the current resolution on AI, social media, fake news, what would it be? Wala nang why. What would it be na lang? One sentence.
I think it would be that whatever charges it brings will also be fed to the other regulatory bodies and used as complaints against them there. So, for example, we have new ethics for lawyers, and in those ethics, it's prohibited to spread disinformation or create sock puppet accounts just for spreading disinformation or for circumventing those rules. And I think you saw in this last election that you don't have people like Larry Gadon or other people employing those same tactics. And they're very careful now with their speech. So if we are able to get these other professional bodies to hold these people accountable, then that might be the start of something as well. And then what I think is important also is that how Smartmatic was able to challenge the people assailing their integrity in the States. So they're able to file defamation suits, and they won. They got settlements, and people stopped talking about it. And for sure, we're lucky this election that the gap between 12 and 13 is 1 million. So that's not that close. But there will be an election where it will be closer. In fact, I'm still looking at races where the gap is less than 10,000. Or if it's a smaller town, something like in the hundreds. It doesn't seem like that happened this election, but there might be some. And there will always be people who will blame the machines, who will blame some form of cheating. And so it's going to be interesting to see how, part of the appeal of having that new COMELEC chairman who was adamant on changing the tech. So we had a whole new process this election. We had a host of technical issues. Was that to encourage trust, to say that this isn't the same old system, and although things are similar, they're not the same. And hopefully that brings back trust. So hopefully the disinformation on the system itself, the certainty of disciplinary action, whatever form it takes, whether it's part of the COMELEC, because COMELEC says we'll only take action if it happens during the election period. But these things happen way before the election period. So the myth making, the narrative building, these are all way before they become way before they become candidates. At this point, the election period will be it's only the icing on the cake. Because people made up their minds long before. So it's a lot. You said short. So
pero I think my takeaway from a lot of things that you said is that there should be I guess a multi-agency response to these kinds of things, not just the COMELEC. But the other thing that yung isa pang bagay na takeaway ko is the word trust, right? Trust. We have to trust the system. We trust the process. But something shook me. Na-shook ako dun sa fact na I trusted the surveys, guys. Let's talk about the surveys, diba? That's an interesting topic. Like, I was not expecting Bam Aquino or even Kiko Pangilinan to get into that top 12. I wasn't expecting Marcoleta to get into the top 12. So what happened there? I think we'll go to Doc first, and then I think Kiko has some insights, and then we'll go around. Doc, anyari? Anyari sa surveys?
Let's assume muna it's not a fluke. Possibly a fluke. Pero kasi everyone got it wrong. Pero I think the common explanation now is may audience na hindi na-capture. And I remember, nandun si Dana rin eh. It was a journal event. There was a pollster there who was asked, kasi they made the point na we don't rely on digital, yung pollster na to. They do traditional call-outs, yung survey method nila. And they said, they made the big point na hindi naman daw digital ang Filipino audience. So sabi ko talagang perfect sagot dun eh, yung election na to na clearly you were not talking to the people who voted for the people who were not ranking in the surveys. No? So I feel na there's going to be a massive recalibration, if ever, across the board. And now that audience, they'll have to find a way to catch that audience. And the assumption now is that's the Gen Z and the young millennial audience. And lalo na in 2028, Gen Alpha kasama na dyan. And there could also be a parang negative feedback loop na since the youth proof na nakaka-move pala sila ng votes, tapos wala sa survey yung nanalo, that might actually end up discouraging them from participating in the survey. So I mean, yun yung mga, those are the things parang percolating in my head now. No? But again, could just be a fluke kasi surveys have been traditionally reliable. So who knows? Baka in the next election, babawi yan.
Quick input lang ha, the recent young adult fertility survey, which covers more than fertility and also a lot of other youth-related stuff, said that the youth is actually are forced to be reckoned with when it comes to the elections, just because of the sheer number of young people. No, so it's possible that population was not covered. No, Kiko, do you have anything to add? Anyari? Of course, was a nice surprise, but
just on the youth, no. I think also there was an alienation of that youth by the last administration. Remember in 2016, that youth was a major part of the force that catapulted him into power. And then a few months later, they turned on each other, much like they turned on each other now. But another thing that I think one of the talking heads on survey firms said, what surveys aren't able to capture are the private groups when they discuss and how effective those are. In several private groups that I've had, I think there were several groups that were completely lost as to who to vote. So a lot of the votes came in last minute. And in those groups,
Correct.
you have a list of people that the main influencers in that particular group were willing to vote for. And then other people would use those as references na. And I think there's this feeling that people in those small groups trust each other because you don't have paid influencers showing who to vote. So it's really all personal experience. And I think that dovetails with the idea that they voted. There's a lot of single issue votes. So they voted Bongo not because of his association with the former president, but because of the malasakit centers. They voted Bato not also because of his association with Duterte generally, but because they supported this idea that we needed to be tougher on drugs. They voted for Bam because their kids would appreciate the vote for BAM. More than the education part. I think the education stories are coming out now, and it's really interesting to see people bite on it, to see them react to that, when I don't think that's the reason why BAM won. There are a lot of other reasons, and I think mostly because both slates were kind of thin, that people were going like, I didn't know this person, I didn't know this person, I won't vote for this person because I don't know him.
Yeah.
And the ones who were remained were like, no, I don't like this person. So you have a lot of undervotes, and that shows in the number of total votes that each candidate carried. The top vote getter was like 36%, which is strange for Senate because it's not either or, right? It's not a cumulative thing. So it's possible for someone to get 50, 60% of the total vote. That didn't happen this election. That tells me that people were voting, two separate realities. So there's one reality where, and you can see it in the Manila balance of Luzon divide, right? So in Manila, consistently the top vote getters are BAM and Kiko, and then they just rank in the top 6 elsewhere. So which means that there's some crossover to some extent, but not that much also. So it's a very divided electorate at this point, and I think more than anything, it highlights the polarity that people have when it comes to their politics. Might be even worse than before because there's no crossover vote. If anyone displayed a crossover vote, it was BAM and Kiko because because they were the most non-threatening of all the ones that ran. These people also ran in 2015.
Yeah.
And they ran in 2016, 2019. They also ran in 2019. They did not get the same traction. They ran in 2022. They did not also get the same traction. So, I mean, the narratives about, this time it's ganyan because of that's fighting the last election. Clearly, these guys were now fighting the current election, and I guess that would be why they won, because they weren't fighting the on the LP kind of politics that was 2016 to 2022.
Okay. So thanks for those insights. Any other insights, guys?
Ako, I'd like
Let's
to
begin
point.
first. Let's begin first with the definition of a survey. A survey is a snapshot in time. And the last surveys that came out, I think it was SWS, was 2 weeks before the election. Now, what happened in the remaining 2 weeks before the elections? There was a lot of movement. In fact, there was a significant political shift just 2 days before the election itself, wherein the candidate Marcos and candidate Villar decided to swap, not swap, but not just be supported by Alianza, but also be supported by the Duterte. The race is namamangka sa dalawang ilog, right? That happened in the 2 weeks time. What else also happened in the 2 weeks after the survey? There was a lot of endorsements. Local government executives endorsed X, Y, and Z candidates, X, Y, and Z senatorial candidates for their support. So I think, and perhaps if this is a distillation of what everybody else has already said, number one, I agree with with Doc when he said that the surveys may not be capturing the audience. This is related to also how pollsters do things. They go there physically, they knock on the door, who opens the door, and then they ask whether or not they can survey somebody. Is it the young person who usually answer the survey? Usually it's not. Usually it's the housewife or it's usually the elder in the family who answers the survey taker's questions, not the child, not the young person, right? And that's maybe why insufficient capture of the youth. That's possible. That's possible. Second, being a snapshot of the moment in time, it wasn't as close to elections to be of value, which is perhaps useful if we decide to take, if some firm out there decides to implement again what do they call those, exit polls. Maybe it can be useful again. The downside with exit polls in the Philippines is that people lie. People don't want to admit that they voted for X, Y, and Z candidate in their precinct because it might open them to criticism, to shame, and so on. Imagine, for instance, if you were a voter in an area that's dominated by a certain religious group, and then you said you did not vote for candidate Y, and it's further list, then you could be subject to shame if someone heard it. But it's something to consider. Capture as accurate as possible. And finally, I agree that the tides are beginning to shift. This is going to be the time of the digital natives, not of the digital immigrants or the digital minds like us. Those who are Gen Alpha, when we turn 18 in 2028, they're going to shift elections. And if the surveys do not capture their viewpoints, if somehow their views aren't part of the conversation, then surveys will not be able to predict what the results will be.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Pierre. So what I'm getting, I guess maybe it's time to review the methodologies, right? Something for our survey firms to consider. Okay, we'll now go to Attorney Dana. Please go ahead.
Well, first, I'd like to point out this was not the first time the surveys got it wrong. Remember yung kay GMA and FPJ, and they were really, really wrong. Kaya nagkaroon ng headline na panalo na si FPJ, yes. And then biglang si GMA pala. Right? And then pangalawa, well, hindi ko kasi binasa closely yung mga surveys, but then if people were uncertain, dapat lumabas yun. Kung meron bang uncertainty, yung undervoting, dapat lumabas yun.
Correct.
Yung pag-capture ng demographic, correct, they're supposed to get a particular demographic. Kasi, okay, maraming housewife na ako, ma'am. Nandyan po ba yung anak nyo? Okay, kung hindi, ganun. May nakapag-survey na sa akin nun. And parang, hindi ako pasok sa demographic na ano niya, so sorry, hindi pwede. Ganun yun eh. And so I don't get all of this explanation. Yung, I asked somebody who runs a small survey firm and bukas pa kasi kami mag-uusap. Pero ang sabi niya, ang tanong kasi is, if the discrepancies can be explained. Unfortunately, wala pa ako naririnig na magandang explanation as to why, kasi ang laki ng jump. Bakit malaki yung jump? Yun yung hindi ako makahanap ng explanation eh. Naz?
Ako naman, nagulat talaga ako sa surveys. I really was not expecting these dark horses to win. And I guess masasabi ko lang is the survey firms have to do a lot of soul searching after these elections. Pero there was one thing that stood out for me. The Makabayan bloc mostly lost. And I think it was due to red tagging, the pernicious, continuous red tagging that happened to them. So, and red tagging, a lot of Filipinos think it's harmless, parang bashing lang, etc. minsan. But red tagging actually kills people. Yung mga nare-red tag, ina-assassinate ng mga vigilante. So, nangyari yan sa journalists, environmental defenders, activists, etc. So it's something that should not be tolerated.
You know, that kind of reminds me of the drug war na kapag may nagchismis lang sa'yo na drug addict ka, then, fear for your life na. Okay. Thank you so much for your very interesting inputs regarding this one. I think that the issue of this survey will continue to evolve. It's also a very interesting research issue na kung paano papalitan yung methodology, paano i-update, paano mas makaka-capture yung mga demographics na na-miss out on this survey. And we've also talked a lot about many different things tonight. Na dissect natin ng mabuti sa tingin ko yung mga problema at yung mga issue around the elections, particularly related to disinformation. So now, syempre, hindi lang dapat puro problema. We're going to do a quick roundtable on possible solutions to any of the problems that you think would be effective. And maybe, tingnan natin sino ba yung mga dapat stakeholders in it.
Can we briefly talk about lang yung the cleaner ng NPC, pero everyone was still kind of pissed off na yung mga pictures nila were on the walls of these things, no? Can we just briefly talk about that? What the hell, right?
I mean, cute pa naman ako dun sa photo ko nun, pero is that okay? We have a couple of data privacy experts here, and also Doc has a lot of thoughts about that. Doc, please start the conversation. Yeah.
Unahan ko na lang. Well, I think the ID on the voter list, that's existed before. Pero usually it's inside, right? It's meant to identify you pag yung mga checkers. Pero this time, pati yung listahan sa labas had the picture. So ano yun? Tinamad lang sila i-print. Pero apparently a year ago, pinaklear na pala ng COMELEC yun with the NPC. So I don't know. Doesn't feel right to have photos sa labas as far as I'm concerned. I don't know.
Okay, to our two data privacy experts in the room, okay lang ba na nandun yung mga pictures natin from like several years ago?
As far as most of the DPOs are concerned, it wasn't okay. They weren't really comfortable with it. They were thinking that it violates proportionality. There could have been measures taken to make sure that people did not feel that violated when information's out there. Yeah.
Sorry, for somebody who's not in the know, what is proportionality?
Proportionality is whatever you display out there. Whenever you do something with regard to your data, it has to be proportional in relation to the purpose for which you post it. So if you do that kind of posting,
wag sobra.
Wag kang OA, right? And it's only enough for you to fight the evil that you're supposed to be fighting with that information. So let's say that you want to put that information there to prevent against flying voters, because the person might not be, they'll claim that they are who they are. So it's not just the checkers that are doing it. It's also the people in the queue. Well, that's okay for that. There has to be some context to it. Yeah, someone has to say that, well, in before this happened, it was just the person at the table. The person at the table is too harried. They couldn't. The election monitors don't have a chance to scrutinize the photo, the difference between the photo and the person who's registering. Okay, fine. But there has to be clear communication on that. There always has to be that context that it happened before, and it has to be something that the COMELEC communicates either through their privacy notices or what. On the other hand, I think the executive director of the COMELEC died recently, and he was the one who was managing their data privacy. And without him, without the proper onboarding of the new DPO, it seems like they were lost and that they were not as strict because the process was not uniform throughout the polling centers. So different polling centers had faces outside. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Some had addresses outside. So there had to be some form of analysis there for that kind of variance per clustered precinct. But it doesn't seem like that was there because the people who were there, the teachers who were there, could not answer the why. So, there has to be that kind of...
Yeah. Sorry, to clarify, there were addresses na nakapost na nakapaskil doon sa labas.
Yeah, there were reports of... Yes, the name, photo...
Hindi lahat. Some had. Most had photos. Pero there were actually some na walang photos. So there were some good precincts, apparently.
Right. So because the implementation was not uniform, there was not enough training on it. There was no, and people couldn't explain why there were good precincts and there were bad precincts. So that's why a lot of the DPL community was not okay with what happened.
Sige.
It's an opportunity for the NPC to issue an advisory.
Yes, and to work again with COMELEC. And it should be a continuing dialogue, actually, not to, after this, not just to give a clear go-ahead, but to have an actual post-mortem to see what are the stakeholders saying, if they're not comfortable with this
They have to perform a privacy impact assessment.
Again. So,
again, yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because I think the COMELEC was under the idea that all the privacy work was one and done. So that's not something.
It's not. It will evolve. It will continue to evolve. Yes.
It should be evolving. It's not it is always a living document.
Okay. Let's hear from our other privacy expert, Attorney Dana, and then I think Naz has some stuff to share as well.
Okay.
Attorney Dana.
Start ako sa long ago nung hindi pa ipinapanganak si Janina. Long ago, yung election noon, manual siya, right? So, I remember, mga 90s yata, nakapaskil yung mga names dun sa outside the classrooms. Inside the school, outside the classroom. Pero itong names na ito, ipapaskil siya actually even before election day. That's the time you check if your name is on the list of voters. Then may resolution ng COMELEC yun. Tapos isusulat ng mga reporters yun na, okay, you can now check dun sa list of voters. So titignan mo na saang presinto nga ba ako.
Yes.
So I think ito na yung naging bago nun. Kaya lang, wala pa kasing Data Privacy Act noon. And that time, I guess, hindi masyadong concerned ang mga tao about their privacy. Pero kasi noon, kasi lalo na, if you're voting in the barangay where you grew up in, magkakakilala talaga kayo. So that was also a way to check kung may ghost voters, ganon, kung dun pa ba nakatira yung crush mo, kung anong picture niya doon, ganun. And then, anyone can take pictures, right? So, ngayon, naging concern siya kasi, una, hindi ko kilala ko sino yung mga kasama kong tao sa kwarto na ito. Baka meron palang gustong pumatay sa akin dito and they know my address. Hindi ko alam kung ano yung nakapaskil sa ibang classrooms. Pero kasi hinanap ko yung name ko dun sa classroom. At nakita ko kung anong number ako dun sa mismong voters registration list. So, I have a suspicion that it might be the same thing na nando sa voters list. So, kung gano'n, yung picture ko, yung address ko, at yung exact number ko dun sa listahan, dun sa barangay, dun sa precinct where I was voting. So, that will make it SPI. But then yun nga, hindi ko alam, may resolution bang in-issue dito? Kasi kung merong resolution, that will be the transparency notice. Na, okay guys, but then did the resolution say it will be posted outside the classroom walls? Hindi ko rin alam. So, tama yung point na gawa ng PIA because I don't know if a PIA was ever done for this part of the voting process. Kasi yung I think ito yung isang carryover do sa panahong manual, digitize na tayo, nagbago na yung perceptions ng tao, may mga bagong batas na, but we sort of forgot.
So the policy is there, but the implementation is kind of late. Or the changes for its implementation is kind of late. Okay.
Yeah.
Nats, you have something to add?
Yeah, I'd like to point something out that we made an issue of. during the time they proposed social media registration along with SIM card registration, we have the right to a certain amount of anonymity. It's basic human and societal behavior that you don't tell complete strangers your name when you see them on the street. You don't. Hindi ka naglalakad na nakapaskil yung pangalan mo dun sa ID tag dun sa t-shirt mo. You don't want strangers to know your name and associate them with your face. So, in that way, may violation eh. Kasi kunyari, kung may itsura ka, pwede kang i-stalk, etc. Diba? So, I really feel that there was a violation here somewhere.
Something so basic, no?
And that
Sana...
somewhere,
Go, Pierre.
That somewhere is actually the process of voting. And that process of voting is published by the COMELEC. In fact, that they released a few graphics that they publish on social media. But those graphics are based on actual policy documents, which is this is how. When Dana was asking whether or not there's a resolution, very likely there is. This is the procedure by which voting is implemented. The question goes back to Kiko. Did they do a privacy impact assessment on the process that includes from the moment the teacher is sworn in as an electoral officer, or the process by which they put the role of voters at the distinct area, the contents of what's going to be posted outside? Did they do a privacy impact assessment there? I find that I agree with Kiko and Dana that there may not have been. Because if we're going to talk about the sufficiency of the information, yung sapat, yung sobra, okay yung pangalan na nandun. If our name is there, our number on the voters list is there, that's sufficient. They don't need to see our pictures or our signatures. They don't need to even see our address. This is information that's known to COMELEC, but for purposes of our neighbors determining whether or not we belong to the precinct, our name and the barangay is sufficient. They don't need any information beyond that. Which leads us to believe, I think, whether or not the privacy impact assessment was properly done.
Okay.
Even without the privacy impact assessment, they had to have privacy on their mind somehow. But that doesn't seem like that was the case, because there's still a lot of variations in the procedures that they took. That's how you know also that you have proper data privacy if the process is consistent. If people on the ground have to make adjustments all the time and the adjustments are not in the book, then whoever wrote the book did not take into account the variables that could go wrong. And not taking into account the variables that can go wrong is a sign that you acted without foresight. So data privacy, the documentation part, that's all just foresight by practice. So one example that I like to use when I teach about it is in Japan, when before a train leaves the station, there are people whose job it is to check that everything is in order before the train leaves. And when they do that, they point with two fingers. They point at what they're looking at. Are the rail lines clear? Is ganyan? They'll point. The privacy work that has to get done before, during, and after is, it's just a paper version of all this pointing. And so it's were there deviations? Why was the deviation done? And so on and so forth. So all of these things have to be justified. And if it isn't justified and someone says, well, this is just the way the things are, deal with it, then you get complaints. Some of the complaints include like the voter verification paper audit trail did not accurately reflect the votes that I cast. And so it's in the response to that from the board at that time varies from board to board. Some did not, most actually did not know what to do. So that could have been something that they could have worked on prior to, and given adequate training to answer those issues at that time. But
Yeah.
I guess it's also birthing pains because you're instituting a completely new system. There are many things that were new that came here, right? So, for instance, like the Comelec commissioner, the Comelec chairman insisted on a hybrid count. So there's always going to be that kind of thing, but that should have prompted them to be extra careful with data privacy.
Mm-hmm.
But
not an excuse. But there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, so it's not an excuse.
Okay. So, that was a very interesting insight then, no? On something so simple, pero malaki pala yung implication to our rights. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've talked about a lot of things. We've dissected a lot of problems, but of course, NetDems is not NetDems if we don't propose solutions. So, we're now going to go to the last part of our podcast, which is the roundtable discussion. It's not really a discussion. It's more like you guys go around and, we go around each of you and then magpo-propose tayo ng very quick solutions. Pierre is smiling at me. Because Pierre is smiling at me, he goes first. So can you give like a really short solution that people can perhaps consider, policymakers, ordinary Filipinos can consider to address any or if you can, all of the issues that we've talked about this evening? Go ahead, Pierre.
Well, let's begin. Our heart is the Magna Carta for Philippine Internet Freedom, where our rights, governance, development, and security, we're promoting this. The concept of every Filipino being digitally enabled is something that we want. And when we say that digitally enabled, it also means that we also uphold our data privacy rights, that the state protects us against nefarious actors and actions like deepfakes and such like, and so on and so forth. But while we're working on it, there are still a few things that can be worked on independently. We're waiting. A lot of people are still do not have the ability to get online, and this is why they depend on chismes like kwentong barbero. Someone has internet, the other person has not. This person with internet says, I saw this and this is probably true. And this person infects the other person with misinformation that the previous person already fell prey to. So how do we solve that? Let's try to reach universal access. One of the ways that we get there is through the passage of the Konektadong Pinoy Bill. The Konektadong Pinoy Bill, or Open Access in Data Transmission, which was initially proposed in 2017. We are trying to make sure that there will be more players that will enter the internet service marketplace, especially in the rural areas, to provide internet that's cheap, that's fast, that's reliable, and that's accessible. Once we do that, that's what we fight against disinformation, against coordinated internet behavior. In fact, further promote our democracy.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for bringing up the Magna Carta and, of course, making internet more accessible for everybody. I'm gonna go to Doc. Hi, Doc. Please share your thoughts. What solutions
Sa akin, I don't know about policy. O baka pwedeng policy rin siya. Nakatulong yung apps that allowed you to select candidates by issues. Yung Nosy Balasi yata yun. And well, my experience was, I took the quiz and then yung lumabas dun sa app were senatoriables who were never in the surveys, who are, some of them I didn't even hear of before. which tells you na talagang may big gap between how people vote and like the platforms of these candidates. No? Kaya nga, it was in a way a pleasant surprise na some of the people who didn't rank in the survey, nanalo na. So I feel that if we turn that into a policy and have all of these candidates post about their issues or whatever, mga stand nila, it might actually help the electorate vote better. Pero yun na nga pero ano na yan diskarte na ng kada kada candidate. In fact, leading up to the election, parang the consensus nga was the more popular you are, the less you have a stand on anything. And I think at a certain point, it becomes absurd na. Like yung mga, for example, I'll just say it, si Revillame didn't have any stand. And he said, saka na ako maglalagay ng plataforma pag nanalo na ako. Siguro naman that was so ridiculous. Buti na lang hindi nanalo. So I feel that any way we can help educate voters better and get more information out there, short of giving them a survey, then have them fill up something and then post the results, will be better in the long run. No? So I feel that's something we can do better, considering ito na nga yung naging result of the election.
Use tech for good instead of evil. And because we're on that line, Naz, any recommendations?
Yeah, I'd like for the powers that be to pass net neutrality laws in the Philippines. Because what's currently happening is that audiences are being funneled to social media platforms by these data packages where you buy a package and you get a free allocation of Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, etc. So, ang ginagawa ng mga tao, they tend to not leave these platforms when they're consuming information, because if they go to the open internet, they will incur data charges. So, yung mga propaganda sa social media and sa echo chambers and yung mga sarili-sarili nating multiverse of dun sa walls natin na may iba-iba tayong version ng mundo sa social media, naiipit tayo dun. So, it's one solution that can help the balkanization of Philippine internet and the entrapment of audiences in these echo chambers where they're not able to talk to people outside of these chambers. Hindi mo makakausap yung mga kapwa Pilipino mo dahil naiipit ka dito sa mga malilit na mundong ito. And then the second one is, this is going to be a bit controversial, but I don't believe that Philippine elections is democratic in the sense that we don't have enough information on our candidates. Kapag wala sa media or hindi incumbent yung candidate, especially at the local level sa LGUs, wala. They're just names on a piece of paper, which has been my consistent experience ever since I started voting. I didn't know who these candidates were, so how can you choose leaders when you don't know who they are and what they stand for? So maybe if COMELEC can gather basic information about candidates and publish them, or if not COMELEC, civil society, media, or other organizations, down to the LGU level, where a lot of the mismanagement and corruption happens.
So more voters' education and more awareness regarding our candidates, as well as, confining people in certain applications where certain narratives can actually fester and be amplified. Okay, I'll go with Attorney Dana, and then we'll have the El Presidente of NetDems go last. Okay, Attorney Dana, go ahead, please.
Implementation lang ako. If NPC would implement the law more, like ang daming complaint, hindi lang sa NPC, no? Sa mga police din. Hindi alam ng mga tao kung saan magko-complain at marami silang experience na nag-complain sila, cybercrime, cyber libel, sabihin ng police, wala kaming magagawa, wala kaming capacity to investigate. But we spend a lot of our lives online na kalahati, hindi naman siguro kalahati, but for some people, kalahati ng buhay nila digital na. Pero walang digital na katumbas yung government pagdating sa investigation, sa enforcement ng rights. So, mas sana yun lang Ang dami nating batas, pero hindi naka-catch up yung implementation ng executive dun sa digital world.
Sabi nga nila, practice is the ceiling of policy. And now for our last recommendation, Kiko, go ahead.
Well, on top of all that, we need to remember that what unites us is greater than what divides us. There's, all of that. There are people who feed on that increasing balkanization, polarization of the electorate. And I guess the first thing is to be, we start voting more for candidates who unite or are able to cross divides and are able to bring people into agreement versus the politics as entertainment that we've been seeing, not just extending to the last election, but even before that where politics is just entertainment, as opposed to the means by which we understand and decide what's important to us and then work together for that. I understand that's coming from privilege, but we have to be able to make it work for everyone, not just the people who have that access, not just the people who um, who take advantage of just how ignorant everyone is of our low reading comprehension. So there's that. And so on top of everything that we've said here, also to support Attorney Dana, there's this idea that Pinoys are pasaway, that there will always be bad actors, and based on those bad actors, we should not we should enact draconian laws because these are what work against bad actors. But science has shown that when there are a lot of bad actors, it's because enforcement is not consistent. So instead of focusing on harsher and harsher penalties, maybe we should first start looking at consistent enforcement, on the ability of our law enforcement to understand what they're implementing and implement it correctly. And if that's not possible, then we work on legislation that we can push for that creates actual solutions that work. Long shot, but things we need to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Lady and gentlemen, this ends our podcast for tonight. Maraming salamat sa mga insights ninyo. Maraming salamat sa pagbibigay ng oras sa diskursong ito. At sana maulit, dahil mauulit by next month, hopefully. And for all of you that are listening and are watching this very interesting conversation, thank you very much for your time. And I hope that we see you next month on the next NetDems podcast.
Bye-bye.